All right, everybody. Welcome to the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato, co-founder of Red Knight Properties. And today we have a very special guest. I was actually on his podcast the other week and wanted to return the favor and bring him on. And he's a great guy and he's doing some really exciting things. And he can kind of walk everybody through his story, very, very similar to mine in some aspects. He had a 9 to 5 and he eventually left that. So we really want to hear how he did that through real estate and, why he did that and, what were the motivations behind it. I think it would be a great motivation for my listeners and an inspiration to a lot of people out there. So Will is now one of the founders of CEO Capital Partners. And I'll let Will take it from here. So what's going on, Will?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Anthony. I'm excited to talk. And like you said, we both have that background where we had high wage W-2 jobs and just realized that there was more to life than that. And we wanted to think a little bit bigger, or at least that's kind of how I thought. I'm pretty sure you did too.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a way to think. So
Yeah.
kind of, can you walk people through your background and
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yep. So growing up, I'll take it way back. I was always entrepreneurial. My dad and mom, they raised me. And my dad's always been in business. And he raised me with the mindset, you don't want to go up the ladder, you want to own the ladder. So I was always, we'd go out to eat. I'd go to, I remember I think it was like late 90s when Chipotle was first coming on the scene. And I'd go there and I'd be like, oh, this food's amazing. I want to work here one day. And he'd be like, no, you don't want to work here. You want to own one of these. So he always he always instilled that in me. I'm very grateful for that. And so I started out, what I did was I sold golf balls. I lived on our house, we lived on 5 acres. It backed to a public course, and everybody that played there sucked, and they'd shank their balls into the woods. And I'd go find them in the woods, clean them up, and then I'd take them across the street I'd go through my front yard and then across the street, and I'd sell them on the private course where people typically had a little bit more money and were better golfers. And it was pure profit. It was just sweat equity because I was finding them and, wasn't paying anything for them. So that was my first taste in business, if you will. And I remember one day I made like $100 and I was 7 or 8 years old. It was crazy. So from then on, that really, I really had that was the light bulb moment where I realized that if I want something, or if really anybody wants something, you can, this is America. This is the greatest country on the planet. You can really work and get whatever you want here. So that's what I realized. And fast forward, as I got into high school, I did odd jobs, cut lawns, was always entrepreneurial because my parents never really, it was, if I wanted a new dirt bike or anything like that, I always had to figure out a way to come up with the money. So I wasn't given anything. And I'm grateful for that as well. And got into high school, and then I started to go down the wrong path. I got into drugs and alcohol. And when I went to college, it just got way worse. And there was a string of events in mid to late 2012. I got a couple possession charges and minor MIP as well. And it wasn't fun. And I ended up having this real bad blackout, and then I woke up the next day. It was crazy. And then a family friend, long story short, a family friend was in my parents' driveway, and he's like, hey, I know that you had a crazy night last night. Why don't we get together and would love to talk just man to man. So we talked. He was 18 years sober at the time, and he told me his story, and it was identical to mine. And he was an admitted alcoholic, and that's when I realized that I was as well. And it was a total God thing. Totally, I'm a Christian, and my faith is really what got me to really stick with sobriety. And I ended up coming home from University of South Carolina, got sober, and it was one of the best things I did. So then from there, I walked on, played football to school in Ohio, then transferred. And no. Then I got double hip surgery, and that was the end of that. Then I got in the mortgage business, and that's kind of where the whole real estate stuff started. And that was the high wage job that I had. So I was working in the mortgage business, and for the first year, I just learned the business. And then after about a year, I jumped out into sales. I was chomping at the bit. I wanted to get out into sales the first day I was there. But they knew that I needed to learn. I was only 22 and had very few life skills. So I needed to, and no degree. So I learned the business, jumped out into sales, and bought one house with the money I was making, bought another, and then bought a third. And then I realized that single family is not the way to go, especially in the DC area where houses are just ridiculously expensive. So I had this weird, the mortgage business it's a great business. You can make a lot of money, but it's a grind, and I felt like a hamster on a wheel. So that's kind of where I got to there. If we want to unpack that a little, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Really inspiring, at least for me so far, and relatable to myself in some respects, and I'm sure relatable to a lot of our listeners here. And you've come a long way, so you should be pretty damn proud of
Oh,
yourself. At
thank
least
you.
I would be,
Appreciate
and
it.
I'm sure your folks are pretty proud of yourself too, proud of you as well. So kind of talk about your experience a little bit. I'm sure our listeners would love to know a little bit more about, you started out with single family.
Yeah.
Now we want to hear like what you're doing now. What are you
Sure.
focusing on now?
Yeah. So starting out single family, I did a house hack before I even knew what that word meant. So did a house hack where I moved into a 3-bedroom townhouse. I had 2 roommates, and that was the light bulb moment where I realized that real estate is the way to go. I was basically breaking even on the mortgage, living there, and I was reaping the benefits of all the tax benefits and all of that. So
Great.
yeah, and building that equity. So that was the first one. The second one, after I had been working in the mortgage business for a while, my bank account, I was pretty cash heavy. And I was like, well, what do I do with this money? I don't really know anything about the stock market. So I just bought another house. And then it happened again. And these, just to put it into perspective, one of the houses that I bought was over $400,000. So they weren't cheap. They weren't little $50,000 houses out in Alabama or anything
Yeah.
like that. They were expensive, and I realized that there was a scalability issue with single family. And I started running into, I had a tenant stop paying me. I had another tenant that, she'd call me when a light bulb went out. So I just realized that single family might not be the way to really build a lot of wealth and passive income. So I stumbled upon, I believe it was actually Michael Blanc's podcast. I stumbled on that, and that was kind of the aha moment. And I just dove into apartments and figured out, I just started learning about apartments and syndication, just how it all worked. And it was amazing. I never even knew that existed. Syndication was a foreign term to me. I had no clue what it meant. I figured that all these big apartment buildings were just owned by some very wealthy individual. I had no idea that there were ownership groups purchasing these properties. So I dove in. I obsess over things. Obviously, I have an addictive nature. I was into drugs and all that. So I have a very addictive nature, and I just dove all in. And every time I was in my car, I was listening to a podcast. Every time I was at home, had some free time, I was reading all these multifamily books, Paul Moore's book, Corey Peterson, just all the different multifamily books. And then I finally got to the point where it was like I was in this constant state of learning, and I realized that I needed to take action. So after a few months, it was like, I'm not learning. I think I know enough to where the only way I'm going to learn further is actually jumping out, talking to brokers, and taking action. So that's what I did. And I started doing that, started talking to brokers, and I actually, I went under contract on a deal. It was a 14 unit, about 4 hours from where I live. That deal ended up dying, but soon after that, some people that I am in a partnership with now at CEO Capital Partners. They one of the guys I went to high school with and his dad, they were doing it together. So they came to me and they were like, hey, can you help us raise for this one deal? I said, yeah, of course. I was so hungry to get into a deal. So, so we were planning for that. That one ended up dying as well because we found out it was zoned as a motel and not market rate apartment. So, so that was a big issue. But shortly after that, we had an opportunity to all form and merge together, and that's when we created CEO Capital Partners. And right after that, we had an opportunity to raise for somebody else's deal. Um, so we got in on that as a co-sponsor. We had some other roles as well, and we raised about $500,000, and that was really cool. That was like the first. It was like, okay, now I feel legit. We've done it. We've raised money. This is exciting. Let's do some more. So that's where we got. And then a few weeks later, we ended up on a smaller deal. We were brought in as a co-sponsor and raised about $400,000 on that one. It was a much smaller raise. So we actually viewed, even though that was less money raised, we viewed it as a success. So we were able to get into those really quick, and it was good. So that's kind of what I think. And answer your question, that was a long way to answer your question, but multifamily is so much more efficient, in my opinion, than single family, because you got everything under one roof. You don't have 100 HVACs all over, the state or multiple states. It's all confined. You get economies of scale, which drives down the management costs. It drives down the utility costs. It just makes more sense economically to do it that way. I always liken it to, when I was first explaining it to people, it's like shopping at Costco. You're buying in bulk, so you get a discount.
At least you hope you get a discount.
Yeah, right.
Depends what market you're in, but
yeah,
that's
and as
great.
of late, deals have been so expensive, so there hasn't been a ton of discount. But yeah, you're right.
Exactly. No, that was amazing. So basically, you had two opportunities you were working on that kind of went to the hayside, and then miraculously, maybe it was by fate, you had two other opportunities that you did, and now it was
pretty incredible how it came about.
And that's amazing, because at least for me personally, and a few other people in my business that I know of, they're working on something very similar. They're working on something. They were getting their name out there. It might, they're working on it, or somebody outbid them, or whatever the case may be. But then a week later, another opportunity comes, and it's even better. And
exactly,
it's insane. I mean, I've experienced it personally. That might just be more of a question of fate. But
no, it's so true. And to put it on a timeline, that was from when I started taking action and talking to brokers. That was probably to when we got into those first. The first deal was in, when was it? It was in I believe it was May or April of last year, and then the next one was like 3 weeks later. So it was so fast. But before that, when we had the two deals die, and I was looking through it, I underwrote a ton of deals, and there was just nothing. Submitted tons of LOIs, didn't get any. Had to play bridesmaid a bunch of times, and that was probably 7-8 months. So it was a goose egg for 7 or 8 months, and then it just came out of nowhere. And you're absolutely right. It feels like you're not making any progress, and then something can just come out of the blue, and it can turn everything around.
No, 100% agree. And if you could kind of talk a little, so you've been obviously on the very active side, and for our listeners, that's called the general partnership side, or a few terms thrown out there in real estate. Now, a lot of people, at least that I work with, and I'm sure that you work with too, don't want to manage the property, don't want to underwrite deals. They either work a full-time job as a lawyer, doctor, broker, whatever the case may be, and want exposure to real estate, because we're recording this during coronavirus, and the market's all over the place.
Right.
And in general, the market's all over the place. So people, in my experience, want to diversify into hard assets that are, safe and tangible, and that leads to real estate. So I guess the question I have for you is, why did you choose? You already talked about single family versus multifamily. but why did, I guess, you choose multifamily as the investment vehicle to attract your investors to come in with you passively?
Yeah,
Because
you're saying,
you're really
yeah,
providing an opportunity. It's more of, it's a diversification opportunity. And I guess
exactly.
to follow up on that question is, I guess, why, what are the benefits for someone to come in, and have you guys essentially take the lead on these deals, which is what you've been doing.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to buy one of these themselves, I think that's what you're getting at. It's a lot of work, a lot of money you have to put up. And it's uncharted territory for a lot of people. Maybe somebody's owned a rental property, but that's not managing 100 unit property or anything like that. So to be able to, and I have actually invested as a limited partner in a different deal as
Mhm.
well. So I have experience on both sides of the aisle, if you will. Um, but I think that the benefit to people is that, like you just said, people are busy. A lot of and these are not small amounts that people invest in. You're not investing $100 chunks here and there. It's 25 to 100 grand as the minimums in these deals. So typically the people that are investing are higher net worth individuals, and they're working, and they either own a business or they're an executive at a company or something like that, and they just don't have the time to deal with buying an apartment building. So they would rather put that money with somebody that is in this full time, that is doing this, that is doing this and is educated, that knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, and is going to identify and tie up good deals. And they'd rather just put it with them and let it ride. You know, it's no different than investing with, um, some, say, Berkshire Hathaway. That's what Warren Buffett does. He invests in stuff, and people trust him with their money, and that's how it works. I'm not saying that we're Warren Buffett or
Not
Berkshire
yet.
Hathaway or anything like that,
Soon.
but
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yet. But that's why people do it, and they want to diversify. They want to take advantage of the depreciation that's given from these from investing in multifamily, and specifically in commercial real estate. The benefits that in terms of taxes are incredible. Depreciation, bonus depreciation, cost segregation, all that stuff. Just it's incredible, as you know. So people want a piece of that, and they don't want to have to manage the, as Grant Cardone says, the tenants, termites, or toilets.
That's
So
true.
so I would say that's the reason why people would want to come in as a limited partner.
Yeah, and I can relate to that
Yep,
wholeheartedly.
exactly.
Well, that's great. So that was a great summary and excellent story. And well, you should be very proud of yourself. And I'm looking forward to seeing your progress in the near future and even long term.
Much
So we're gonna
appreciated. I'm
wrap it
hoping
up.
some opportunities come up after this coronavirus stuff. I'm hoping cap rates rise a little bit and we can find some stuff.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
We're all in this together. So,
exactly.
so yeah, we're going to slowly wind this down, and we have just three questions that we always ask at the end of our shows. And the first one would just be: you have a favorite? I know you mentioned a couple of books that you were reading. Is there any one book that stuck out to you in multifamily that you really liked?
Yeah, it was, let me think for a second. It was probably it was probably Paul Moore's book, The Perfect Investment. That was the one that really opened my eyes.
Interesting. I
Yep.
actually haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a great book.
Oh, great. And outside of real estate and all this whole world, do you have what are your hobbies?
Uh Man, that's a good question, because I do enjoy what I'm doing and I work a lot. I just got two dogs, so those have been a hobby that's taking up pretty much all my time right now. um, so that I bought a flamethrower about a year ago. That thing is pretty cool. I don't shoot as much as I want, but
Hmm.
I'm sure that's one you probably haven't heard of a ton. but
No.
but yeah, I mean, I'm a adrenaline junkie, and yeah, it's fun to shoot that thing. So
Wow.
I would say that those two are my hobbies.
It's a topic for another show.
Yeah,
And then,
exactly. Right.
and then lastly, do you have a favorite role model, whether it's in real estate or even personally, that you look up
Yeah,
to?
I would can I give you two?
Yeah.
So I would say my dad is that's probably a cliche one though, but my dad was really huge in just changing the way I think and getting me to really he always believed in me and still does with everything I'm doing. So definitely my dad. And then I think another one is this might also be a very common one, but Elon Musk, just what he has been able to do, how he started his first startup, Zip2, or his first big startup was Zip2. He rolled that into starting X.com, which turned into PayPal, which he sold for a lot of money to eBay. And then that's kind of what allowed him to start SpaceX and get in with Tesla and do all the stuff he's doing now. And he really, I mean, it's incredible hearing him talk and just hearing he has no boundaries or limits to what he thinks is able to be accomplished. It's truly incredible. And I think that if you have a tenth of the of the just being able to dream and think big like he does, I mean, you'd be wildly successful. He literally puts no limits on anything. He's trying to get to Mars. He's not worried about a recession or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's just trying to colonize Mars, which is nuts. So I think he's a good role model.
Awesome. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting. Well, how can people find you, Will, if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can listen to our show, Wealth Junkies, or they can just shoot me an email, will@ceocapitalpartners.com.
All right, great. Well, let's give Will another round of applause. And again, thank you so much for coming on the Discovering Multifamily show. Again, I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato. Please subscribe to us on iTunes. You can go to our website, and it's under my company website, redknightproperties.com. Click on podcast media section. You could see, this video and the audio transcription right on there. And thanks again, Will. I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right, you take care.
Thank you.